My name is Leena Heinämäki and I work as a senior researcher at the Northern Institute for Environmental and Minority Law, Arctic Center, University of Lapland. And today I have a great honor and joy to have Christina Allard with me. Christina holds a PhD in law and acts as an associate professor at the Luleå University of Technology and at the Arctic University of Norway, Tromso. Christina has done comparative research on Sami and Indigenous people's rights, both in Nordic context and also in relation to Canada and New Zealand. She is regarded as one of the top experts in legal comparison in Nordic countries, especially in Sami land use issues. Christina has been leading many years also Nordic Research Network for Sami and Indigenous people's law, and last year she published a monograph on reindeer herding rights, where she compares reindeer herding rights in Sweden, Norway and Finland. And she is also a main editor of the international period edition Indigenous Rights in Scandinavia, Autonomous Sami Law, and also an editor of another volume, Indigenous Rights in Modern Landscapes, Nordic Conservation Regimes in Global Context. So, Christina, how would you generally describe the legal and political situation of Sami as an indigenous people in Nordic countries compared to maybe other countries such as Canada and New Zealand? Like some general takes on this.
Well, the most obvious, I would say, is that these other countries like New Zealand and Canada started earlier. So they have addressed these kind of issues much before us than we started in the Nordic countries. So that's obviously, they have taken a few more steps. So they are to some extent ahead of us because of that. Another general difference is that the language which they talk about is a little bit different. They speak about partnerships, about consultations and the duty to consult for the state in matters that actually affect the indigenous populations or indigenous groups within that country. So that's sort of on a very general level. So they have taken a few interesting steps in order to solve these long-standing grievances that have occurred in the historical past.
And then generally, like, what are differences of Sami rights in 3 Nordic countries?
We tend to see the Nordic countries as quite similar, and they are, of course. But when it comes to the law, I see more and more differences actually. And we all as countries have our own sort of evolvement of the legal system and our own concepts and our own ways of dealing with these problematic issues. And that goes also for Finland, because Finland and Sweden was one country in over 600 years, but still there is quite a lot of differences. So that's sort of a general view on that. Then there are differences. Sweden and Norway, when it comes to reindeer herding, it's an exclusive industry for the Sami people, which is not the case in Finland, where EU members or residents can also herd reindeers. So this means that the legislation is different in this respect. On the other hand, Sweden doesn't have any consultations rights specifically aimed for the Sami group, whereas both Finland and Norway has that. Finland has it in legislation, and Norway has it in a specific consultation agreement between the Norwegian Sami Parliament and the government in Norway. So it's different in different aspects. And Sweden and Finland are explicitly recognizing a specific reindeer herding right, which includes hunting and fishing rights, which we don't see explicit in Finland. So the questions are a bit different.
Yes. Then Norway is the only Nordic country that has ratified the ILO Convention. So what are the direct or indirect benefits for Sami community in Norway? And so how would you see and also what could Finland and Sweden learn from Norwegian example?
I think that the basic thing is actually that Norway quite early has ratified the ILO. They have taken a step-by-step approach to address these Sami issues and try to raise the awareness of Sami interests and rights within the Norwegian communities. So they have done so for quite many years now. But on the other hand, one has to point out also that it has been a sort of a parallel process, because the courts and the legislature have done their bit of improving the situation as well. So it's kind of a dual approach. Another thing that I think I want to point out, that although Norway has ratified the ILO, it's also a matter of how you implement it in the national or domestic system. And Norway hasn't adopted the ILO as such. They have part inclusions in certain acts. So the thing is that it's not sort of enforceable that you can bring it into the court and directly refer to certain articles if you have a proper sort of implementation. But you can still use the wordings and the intent of the ILO. And that has been a discussion whether ILO should actually be fully implemented into the Norwegian system. Norway has a specific act where the sort of the 5 most basic broad human rights conventions are directly implemented into the Norwegian law. But the thing was that ILO did not make part of this bulk at the time, so that has been a discussion that it's not fully sort of enforceable at the moment. But this step-by-step approach, I think that's something to consider, that we might not know everything from the beginning, but if we are willing, we take small steps.
Yeah. How would you see that the benefits to Sami people in comparison to Sweden and Finland? Like how has the ILO Convention and all this process, what kind of impact it has had in Sami identity, and how strong Sami culture is? How is there a major difference, would you say, between Norway and then one hand, and then Finland and Sweden on the other hand? Like when we talk about how lively Sami culture is, or how satisfied Sami are in their situation?
It's kind of difficult to say, but Norway is the country with the most Sami, and with this Alta case, that was a big revival for the whole Norwegian community, to raise the awareness that there have been grievances or different opinions of what the Sami rights was really about, and the protection of the Sami culture and their interests. So I think the ILO has meant a great deal, but it's kind of difficult to point in certain. It's more like a broad sort of ideal picture that you can sort of measure what Norway is doing or what it ought to be, or but for the most part it hasn't been that scary like some might have thought it would be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's good to hear. So there is a recent quite interesting case in process in the district court in the northern Sweden, where Sami actually won the case over the legal rights. Can you tell us a little bit about this case and its situation? And
Sure, it's indeed very interesting. Actually, it's a Sami village or Sami community, the Girjas, who sued the state. And they claim they have better rights to hunting and fishing, or actually they claim exclusive hunting and fishing rights within their reindeer herding area, which they sort of use all the year. So it's a very specific area which is intensely used on the basis of Swedish property law. And the court found, actually, after historical assessment and after using the sort of common property law concepts in the Swedish system and adjusting them culturally to the type of land use that the Sami village or Sami community has used. So they actually won the case, but it's in the district court. And the court held that the Sami village had the hunting and fishing rights on these particular areas. And it's part of the reindeer herding rights, so it's kind of a bundle of rights, but the hunting and fishing. Because the state has previously claimed that they have at least half of the hunting and fishing rights in this area, because the state is the owner of the lands. But the court also held that the Sami community had the right to administer grants to other people to come and hunt and fish. And that is a system all from the beginning that the state had administered. So it's the county administrative board that have this authority to grant the rights from the Sami to local or tourists coming in and want to do this kind of hunting and fishing in the north. So it's kind of revolutionary in that sense. But it's appealed, so it will be in the appeal court in, I don't know, one year or so. So it will be interesting to follow. But the question are really it's core questions about rights. So it has the potential to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Is there a lot of discussion, like the possible implication of this case for the generally Swedish atmosphere in relation to Sami rights and possibility for other such cases to be brought to the court? Is there a lot of debate going on in Sweden now?
Well, the possibility of other cases, we just have to see how it ends in the final verdict. But there is discussion about this administration of the hunting and fishing rights, and some locals are quite worried that because people living in these rural areas, they are really dependent. That's one of the reasons they live there. They want to have access to hunting and fishing grounds. So some of them are kind of worried that they won't have access if the Sami village or the Sami community will administer the grants or licenses for hunting. But that will lie in the future, how this is worked out.
Yes.
If the Sami still win in the next levels.
Yes, that will be.
But it's really interesting, and for the strict court, they really did very nice work, huge assessment of the material and especially the historical background, because the Sami village had to establish or to prove that they have used this area this intensively in order to have an exclusive right. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you, Christina, so much for these very important insights.
You're welcome.